Let's start from the basics. Talk to us about the mandate of the ECOWAS Court.
The mandate of the ECOWAS Court, initially it was an interstate court that was dealing with matters between the states themselves. Then in 2005, they gave the court the human rights mandate to the effect that the court had jurisdiction to deal with matters, complaints from citizens or in all the member states whose human rights in various aspects were violated by the member states, the state actors, the police, security, anybody at all. So, and that is what has made the court what it is now.
So how do you say has been the role of the court in promoting human rights within the West African sub-region since its creation?
As I said, from 2005, the role of the court has been very, very important. For instance, freedom of speech and freedom of speech particularly. Talking about Gambia, especially, when Jammeh was the president, there's so many violations of human rights, and the court had the occasion to pronounce on them and declare them illegal, and made pronouncement to the effect that some of the laws that were being applied even within the country were violations of international laws that the government of Gambia itself had signed onto. When a state signs onto international laws, you have to prove your standards up to that level. So if you sign treaties on international best practices, freedom of expression, safety of journalists, and then you arrest journalists and imprison them and kill them, that's against the laws, and therefore the court pronounced on them. There are so many of them in Nigeria. There was censorship some time ago before the election, into one of the elections. They wanted all journalists, all press houses to bring all their publications for them to censure before they aired them, and they came to the court. The court said no, that's against the rules of international law, and therefore the court said no, you cannot do that. So there have been so many things. Individuals have had their rights, some killed, some maimed, some imprisoned. They come to the court declares, and in some cases the states comply. They release the people involved. Sometimes they pay compensation to the people. So it has truly affected their lives in a very important and positive way.
Not too many people will understand or appreciate the work that you've done. So I would like for you to maybe state a few of these cases that you've worked on and that the ECOWAS Court of Justice is satisfied with.
Thank you very much. One that comes to mind recently, the case of Molu versus Sierra Leone. There was a student rioting. It was not even riot, it was a demonstration by students because they had been made to stay home for over a year and the university was going to be closed. So they did a peaceful march in the city, and the police accosted them and shot live bullets against them. One of them, Molu, had a gun pellet in his body, and the Sierra Leonean doctors couldn't remove it. He went to Kolebu in Accra, Ghana, a bigger hospital. They looked at it and said no, where the pellet was, they could not, if they removed it, it will have devastating effect on his health, and therefore he had to live with it. He came to the court and we awarded $20,000 compensation for him against the country. Up until now, it hasn't been paid. That is one of them. And then in the same Sierra Leone, young girls who got pregnant, school girls, were prevented from going to the mainstream schools. They set up a school for them where they were teaching them only math, English. And of course, you're talking about the level where they were studying 8 subjects for an external examination to go ahead to the university. And so the WAVES is a women organization that came to court. And when they came, we said, no, the Minister of Education has no power to do that. There should be equality among the people. So we applied the Maputo Protocol and said that, no, it is a violation of their rights as girls. And therefore, later they admitted all of them into the mainstream education and gave them the full education that they deserved. That's one of them. We go to Togo, Amnesty International versus Togo. Before the last election in Togo, there was a disturbance. The government wanted to change their constitution as usual, and therefore there was a disturbance in the city. Knowing that social media is what is used to propagate all the information around, they closed the internet for a couple of weeks. And therefore, Amnesty International individuals who have been affected, their businesses have been affected, came to the ECOWAS Court, and we declared that though right to the internet is not a human right itself, but it's a means by which they can achieve freedom of expression, safety of journalists, everything. And therefore, we declared that that was a violation of their rights, because without the internet, you cannot propagate information, you cannot receive or disseminate information. This is also another case which I think is very important in the system. Then in Nigeria, there's the censorship case I was talking about. The government wanted to look at every publication, but especially the private media. So before they go and disgrace, they call it disgrace, the government in the eyes of the voters. And that was not done because the lawyers came to court quickly and said that could not be done. So the court also whittled down their decision. These are a few ones that come to mind.
Now, talking about right violations, it's only important that we state clearly that once one has his life taken, I mean, that would be the highest of it. Yeah. Now, we have the Gambia, for instance, we have Liberia, even Sierra Leone, but particularly, let me be very precise with Liberia, where there is this call for the creation of an economic and war crimes court, which recently was approved by the president. I'm really asking, how much is the ECOWAS Court of Justice involved in this process? Because for most of these people, millions of them, all they want is justice, and that's what you represent.
Very well. For Liberia, they have not been contacted in any way, but for Gambia, we know that it's been set up by the ECOWAS Commission, by the country with the support of the ECOWAS Commission, because it has to have an international character. Otherwise, if it's done within and by the country alone, to be seen to be witch hunting of the government against its opponents, previous opponents, and therefore the ECOWAS Commission is part of it, and they are still doing their legislation. And I'm aware that staff from this court, lawyers from this court, are supporting them to do their legislation. And when it is done, the judges who are going to sit there are not Gambian judges. There could be one or two, but they are going to appoint them from within the sub-region, from the various countries who are experienced in criminal justice, so that they go and do the trial. So to give it the international fair practice that we all desire. But for Liberia, we have not been contacted, and I don't know anything about it.
If I may ask, this is where you will have citizens complain about delayed justice. And I think this will give you the platform to maybe explain further some of the challenges that the court faces. But for some people, for instance, in the Gambia, I would assume that this has taken too long. And why would that be, or why has that been?
Okay, thank you very much. The Gambian issue, I think the new government that came initially was proactive in trying to find justice for all. That's why they set up the TRRC, the Reconciliation Committee. They did well. They published their findings, except that the white paper issuance took a very long time. I don't know, because government knew they were going to pay money, obviously, so they needed, before they accepted, they needed to make sure they had the money or wherewithal to be able to deal with the outcomes of it, and that's one of the causes of the delays. And then secondly, well, though as you said, it's justice denied, but I think in a way, in the circumstances, they are doing their best, because it's a little country and money is very difficult to come by, and compensations are also paid with money, so I think once they've been able to put in place all these things, it's quite a bit commendable. I think if all the governments are able to do this in a way, it will also help us. But talking about the ECOWAS Court itself, the delays are mainly caused by the language factor. We deal in 3 languages, Portuguese, French, and English. And before processes are concluded, we need to translate them into the 3 languages. And unfortunately, citing financial situations, we try several times to have our language department augmented by getting so many translators in-house. That is not forthcoming. So we have, as at now, we have only 6. That's 2 for each language. And looking at the volume of work in this court, so if they file a document which is very voluminous, it takes months and end for them to be able to translate it into the other languages before it comes before the judges for them to. That one alone may take about 6 months or sometimes 1 year. So these are some of the causes. So the financial aspect, getting people recruited and getting approval from the powers that be, is a major problem for the court.